My story wouldn't be possible without the strong women who came before me. My grandmother, Victoria, came to the United States at 7 years old. She taught her family the value of hard work as she cleaned houses and worked as a maid. She passed on those values of hard work and perseverance to my mother, single mom, to myself and my twin brother, Joaquin. And in just two generations after my grandmother arrived here, I had the honor of serving in President Obama's cabinet and the honor of running for President of the United States. I got into public service because I wanted to make sure that more people could have the kind of opportunity that I felt blessed to have in life. But that doesn't happen by accident. It happens when you have good leaders working to make that opportunity possible. There's one candidate I see who's unafraid to fight like hell to make sure America's promise will be there for everyone, who will make sure that no matter where you live in America or where your family came from in the world, you have a path to opportunity too.
That's right. That's right. Castro got out of the race, last week, I believe. And now he's putting a video out endorsing one Elizabeth Warren. Welcome to the Soapbox. My name is Jamarl Thomas. This is the Progressive Soapbox. Guys, if you dig this content, please like, share, subscribe. You can always support PayPal, Patreon. Excuse the emptiness of the room. We are still setting up after the move. We were moving for the last 2 days. That's why I was absent. Excuse me, still busy, even though I wasn't necessarily here. Castro gets out of the race. Now, he got out of the race because clearly he didn't have the support that he needed or the fundraising, etc., etc. But he gets out and he gives this 2 percentage points to Warren. Now, this doesn't mean that the people who are backing him are going to immediately vote for Warren, but some may. The catch becomes, does this matter? Does this matter? Let's let this video finish.
That's why I'm proud to endorse Elizabeth Warren for president.
You did so many things in this campaign.
Yeah.
And it continues to matter. It's not just in the past tense, it matters.
You know, I started my campaign off and we lived true to the idea that we want an America where everyone counts. It's the same vision that I see in you, in your campaign, in the America that you would help bring about. Nobody is working harder than you are, not only in meeting people, but listening to people, and also bringing the goods and saying, okay, this is what I'm going to do about it.
The thing I hear the most from people in the selfie lines is hope. Hope.
Yeah.
Because we know what's broken, we know how to fix it, we're building a movement to get it done.
We're building a movement to get it done. I hate to throw cold water on this, but does this matter? Like, does this support, this endorsement from Castro, does it change the character of the race? Does it change the way people feel about the various candidates in the race? Does it get her any additional bang for her buck? Well, I'm going to go out on a limb and say no. I don't think this matters one iota. Castro was one of the people in the race, and he gives this endorsement, so it's immediately going to be news. So fair enough. But does it matter? Warren has fallen like 14 points in many of the polling. And Castro, whatever his polling thing is, clearly people weren't giving him the support. Otherwise, he would be in this race. Whatever the key demographic is, I would argue that one of the demographics that Warren wants to get inroads into is Hispanics, because Sanders has essentially made a lot of inroads into that particular demographic. But this doesn't give her that. If it did give her that because of Castro, then he would still be in the race. I hope you get what I'm saying. The fact that he's not in the race gets across, for the most part, a certain degree of irrelevance. To put it in perspective, these are the last 2 polls to come out. All right, CBS. This is Iowa. Joe Biden. Oh, I'm sorry. Right here. am I? Where am I? I think it's up here. I'm sorry. Okay. Among those candidates you are considering, if the 2020 Democratic primary caucus were your state were they held today, which one would you vote for? Bernie Sanders, 23%, Joe Biden, 23%, Buttigieg, 23%, Warren, fourth place, 16%. And just so we're clear that that's not, we can look at the average. Right here. Iowa, Sanders, 22%. Buttigieg, 21.7%. Biden, 20.3%. Warren, 15.3%. Castro, I don't even think is registering. I hope you get my point. Yes, it's nice that he gives his endorsement. Yes, it's nice that he makes a campaign video with her. But does it matter? Does it matter? Here's another one. This is New Hampshire, another battleground state. Bernie Sanders, 27%. Joe Biden, 25%. Elizabeth Warren, 16%. I'm sorry, 18%. And again, just to be clear, just so we show it's not a fluke that I'm making it up or a fluke poll, Sanders, 22.7%. Biden, 18.7%. Buttigieg, 17.7%. Warren does best in Nevada, and even at her best, she's only 0.2 ahead of Sanders in Nevada. And again, Julian Castro registers at 1%. So assume for the moment that everybody who loves Castro, who's fired up for Castro, who wept when Castro got out of the race, if all of those people gave their 1% support to Warren, wouldn't matter a hill of beans in none of these states. Ultimately, this is a very nice video that these two put together. Great production, all that stuff. But the reality of it is, it doesn't matter at all. Castro was pulling in 1%. He can give that 1% to Warren. There's going to be some fall off from that. So let's say she get 8.8. Give it all to her. Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter one iota. And by the way, one last thing. This thing that people are talking about with this notion of having more people of color in the race and everything else. Look, if there was a person who was black, gay, Hispanic, whatever, and I full well believe was authentic, and I thought he was fully authentic, then I would have no issue voting for that person. Just like a lot of people across the United States, be it black, be it Hispanic, especially these two large constituencies within the Democratic Party, they chose somebody else other than somebody who was them on an identity basis. Just because somebody looks like you does not necessarily mean they're going to be looking out for your interests. Obama, yes, he's black. However, he was also perfectly willing to give 95% of the income gains to the top 1%. His race did not in any way stop him from doing that. At some point, I think the public is starting to get wise to this, which is why I think the public has started to look at people and say, it's more than just their color. It's more than skin deep. It has more to do with what you're going to do when you get into that office. And I want to have some kind of fair appraisal of you that I honestly believe that when you go in, you're going to do what you say you're going to do. Now, you have some people who are voting for Joe Biden who are getting that kind of, we want to go back to the Obama era. We want to protect Obama's legacy, or we believe that this is the guy that can essentially hold back the night. All sorts of things that go into this notion of Joe Biden being somewhat of a safe bet. And the other point, Sanders, we want fundamental, complete change. These are two ideological ends within the context of the Democratic Party that are trying to have their way out. Meaning this interregnum, this decision in regards to what does the Democratic Party represent, what does the Democratic Party stand for. And to some degree, that will be decided in this election. This is only a sideshow. just a sideshow. A nice one. It's colorful. But ultimately, not mattering one iota. I leave this here. I'm not going to keep this long. I don't want to rain on, their parade and everything else. But I saw this and I thought, this doesn't matter at all. Pop reality. Let's be CNN clear. Who wasn't expecting this? He played a role in housing crisis and at HUD. And by the way, somebody made the point that he's angling for a vice president spot, meaning that if Warren was able to exceed the primary, him endorsing her might put him in line for, again, a vice presidency spot or, some other position. And think of it in these terms. Sanders probably would not select somebody like Castro. It's not bad, but he wouldn't select him. Ultimately, Sanders is looking for a woman. He's probably looking for a woman of color. Warren is probably also looking for a person of color. I mean, after all, it's the Democratic Party. And sometimes they're trying to level out, you can say the vice president levels out the presidency in this kind of case. Not to mention he's younger, and Warren has some age on her, just like Sanders. I mean, people act like these people are worlds apart. They're only a few years, I think less than 10 years. So it would make sense, I guess. But I hate to break it to you, Warren is not going to make it out of the primary. Warren is still having these fights with Buttigieg, which means that these two people are fighting for fourth. First, second, Sanders and Biden. And again, I could go through the polling with you on RCP. I mean, look at this. South Carolina. South Carolina is where Warren is probably doing her best. And again, Sanders is a point away. California. Sanders is 0.2 from Biden in California. And I would make the point. I'm going to make a prediction that Sanders is going to take California. If Sanders takes California, Sanders is going to win this primary. Mark my words. Biden can win this, so don't misunderstand me. This notion of him sleepwalking his way through the primary, yes, he could do that. But this is not an issue for Warren. this campaign video that they paid for is nice, but it signifies absolutely nothing. I'm going to leave this here. One sec. Right here. There we are. Kills for a living. The video convinced me to vote for Elizabeth Warren. You're wrong, JT. She's the hardest worker, whatever that means. And you think he endorsed Warren because Obama was pulling for her. Look, it's possible. So there are a few points with this. You must understand. Think of it this way. When Tom Perez was going for the DNC chair position, if you remember, Keith Ellison was the one that was running for that race. Perez wasn't even in the race. Perez got into the race when Obama and you could say Clinton behind the scenes were pulling for somebody other than Ellison to be the head of the DNC. Clinton leans in and tells Tom Perez, don't let Sanders take the party. Now, this is not just going to stop there. I mean, if you think back, the Democratic Party was influencing the various races across the United States in regards to who they wanted to run in those seats. Behind the scenes, of course they work to their ends, especially if they believe, especially as I believe, that these guys are a faction of a party that is trying to ensure that that faction remains. It's like anything else, any other organism that wants to maintain its existence. In this case, you have a political body or political organization of certain people that consider Sanders to be an existential threat, Obama being one of them. And they will do behind the scenes what they need to do. However, it is also very possible that Castro was just looking for just rank getting ahead, rank opportunism in regards to political achievement. If Warren takes the primary in some shocking twist of fate, her recovering from the 14-point drop, then yeah, he will be in contention for endorsing her early on and for being one of the names that she may pick for either a vice president or somebody else in their cabinet. I got to be honest, I have a hard time seeing Warren and Castro winning against Trump. I just have a hard time seeing it. To me, it does seem to me that Sanders is a natural, you could say, he inoculates in some weird sense. I mean, this anger and rage that Donald Trump brings with him, Sanders also brings it with him. But the catch is, it's legitimate. The public has been able to see what Donald Trump does when he's in office for the last 4 years, and they can also see who he represents in that office, regardless of what he says. There's an element that support Donald Trump because of this pushback against the system, this rage and everything else. Some of them are racist, yes. Some of them are, they just go, Trump supporters just kind of go wherever Trump goes in this case. But some are not. And some bought the lie. And having somebody who's earnest, legitimate, authentic, eats into his numbers. It just seems to me, it's clear as day, that Sanders is the natural antidote to Trump. And yet, that is the very thing that the Democratic Party is going to do everything that they can, helter-skelter, 80 miles off of a cliff, in order to stop Sanders from taking it. They will do their damnedest, whether or not they're successful or not. I would say we need to fight like hell. Take a look at what took place in the UK. In fact, you don't even need to look at what took place in the UK. Think for the moment what happened when Hillary Clinton lost. Think back. Think back. Think back right after you giggled. When it became clear when you're like, oh fuck, she lost. And that thing in you that said, I'm glad she lost, but I'm kind of weirded out that Trump won. And both of those things existing just kind of side by side with one another. Once you get past that part, what did you first think? I told you she was going to lose. And not just I told you she was going to lose. Immediately excoriating, going after every Clinton supporter that laughed at you when you cried at the DNC convention when they dragged Sanders out in a wooden crate and threw eggs and potatoes at him, and Sanders wept and we wept with him. Oh, happy day, happy day. The look on the face when I went to work the next day. And all of these Clinton supporters, the owners of the companies, walks in and looks at me and just shakes his head. It was like you had just nasty, nasty sex that night. And then the woman couldn't look at you the next day and just can't talk about it. can't talk about it. I can't have this conversation right now. You went after them. And why? You should have went after them. Because for all intents and purposes, they lost to reality show hosts. Not just lost to reality show hosts, 1,100 seats all throughout the United States. The House, the Senate, Supreme Court, all of it. Obama didn't even go to the mat for his own guy in the Supreme Court. They lost it all. This party was supposed to be the party that was supposed to hold back the night, and they were incapable of doing the one task, the one main task of any politician and any party, to get elected. You went after them. You're supposed to go after them. They've had control of the party for decades, and now you get the opportunity to do so and to rip it away. The focal point of that is Sanders. But if he loses, same thing happens to you. Same thing happens to you. Fight like hell. Fight like hell. My biggest regret with Sanders is that I think he's too moral to do the job. And in an odd way, that is, you can make a case, his armor of sorts. People consider him to be authentic. And in considering him to be authentic, it's because, for the most part, he sticks to policy. He may go after Joe Biden, but he's going after him for something that's legit, not this bullshit stuff that sometimes happens when you have somebody like a Hillary Clinton or Obama going against Romney and they pick something to the side in order to attack the candidate with. No, he tends to go after substantive issues. However, he also tends to avoid issues that are substantive because he doesn't necessarily want to hit a person in that way. That bothers me. Because ultimately, you're in a contest where people are giving you millions of dollars, and they're giving you millions of dollars to win. And sometimes, in order to win, For example, Hunter Biden. That is an obvious case of corruption. Now, he doesn't want to bring that up. And I can understand why he doesn't want to bring that up. But should somebody in his campaign release a video on it? Yes. Yes. The campaign sometimes needs to go beyond what the candidate wants, because the candidate sometimes can't do it himself. Every Superman needs a Batman. Elephants on Coke. Response: Biden, learn to code video. I became a coder. It took 4 years. Lived with parents. Had easy dead end, but determined, to get out of it. Not everyone has time and money and willpower and intellect to succeed. Video spoke to me. Great work. It spoke to me too. Because, again, I was the same way. I mean, I was ill. You must understand, when I was 17, I was diagnosed with kidney failure. And when you're in a situation like that, it's almost like you're just poor. It's instantiated. It's hard to get out of it. I mean, ultimately, any job that you take, well, for the most part, you lose your health insurance. So you can't really work. And so you end up trying to do this thing of school. And in my case, for like 10 years, I was in and out the hospital. So it took 10 years for me to finish school in this case. And when I finally got out of a hole of sorts, and I said, okay, what am I going to do? I said, all right, let's try coding. I was able to do it. I had the intellect for it. And as long as I was interested in it, there was no issue. But the catch here is, it took years. And then even on the best day, I think it took like a year and a half for the certificate. And then it's another learning experience once you get on the job itself, because whatever you learn, you just learn the basics in school. And it's not easy. It's a way of looking at the world, and not everybody can see the world in those terms. I mean, oftentimes a lot of the stuff is abstract. You're talking about objects, and you're talking about classes, and you're talking about all of these things that don't exist in the real world, and yet in your head they kind of do. You're talking about organizing the way companies and information flows within companies. Sometimes, I know for me, in many of the assignments, I've ever had multiple assignments where it was me and it was somebody else, and we were designing how a particular system was going to work for an entire company, how information was going to be moving through that company or moving through the database for that. Not everybody has either the aptitude or the want to do it. The want has to be there. It's not just aptitude. I hope you understand what I mean. It's almost like playing chess, where you have to just love it, and you love it so much you just stare and do it. And somebody says, that's the Falkbear counter gambit, and you know exactly what it is, because you love it that much, where you were fucking around with these particular openings or these particular attack motifs. Well, that's kind of the way software is. They have all of these nooks and crannies that you need to learn in order to kind of really get it. And to casually say you should just learn the code with somebody who's working in a fucking mine, well, they may not want to learn the code. Maybe they want to work with their hands. Maybe they don't want to be more physical. Does that mean that they should starve or lose their living? And does that also mean that they're going to vote Republican in order to try to maintain their jobs? Yes. Are they wrong for doing it? No. Why would they be wrong for doing it? They're looking after for their material needs. Anybody would look after their material needs in this case, as opposed to this thing that's out there. The only way you don't lose those people is if you have a situation where you make the point of, we're going to ensure that you have work training, whatever that is, for several years. Meaning you give the people time to try to acclimate and go from point A to point B. We've used the resource of coal. We can get back to West Virginia in this case. I hope you understand my point. There are systems where we need to change. I mean, if the world is at stake, then we need to do something about the fact that the world is at stake. By the same token, there are going to be some people who are disadvantaged by that. Now, do we, in a particular party, want to lose those people because we're making that change? The answer is no. You don't necessarily want to let the brunt of your change take place to the various people in the society, because those people will be angry at you, and those people will punish you when they get the opportunity to do so. But that's not the way they talk about it. It's so casual. Just learn the code. Just learn the code. This is coming from a guy who had a crackhead son who was making $50,000 to $80,000 a month working at a company he knew nothing about. in a sector of the world that he knew nothing about. Learn the code. I wish I could get a job like that, Joe Biden. Too bad all of these other people's names aren't named Biden. They wouldn't have an issue with getting from point A to point B. It's just so casual. It's so smug to say that. Learn the code. Get out of here. Get out of here. And by the way, a person shouldn't be penalized for not having that. Like, there's some people who, it's something in them. I don't know what it is. It's that they want something. And they attend themselves to a particular task, to a particular duty, and they do it exceptionally well. And they make either wealth or fame or something like that. All of these things are really just superhuman tricks. The ability to make cash is just really just the game. I mean, ultimately, it's you being able to play that game extraordinarily well and getting all of this wealth. But that doesn't really say anything about you per se, in as much as you can organize your brain and organize your thoughts in a way that can work the system that better than others. Should other people go hungry because they can't do that? I mean, that's the question. If a person doesn't want to work, and if a person or is incapable of work, should they go hungry? I mean, that's the ultimate question for the left, right? Do you want to get rid of poverty in your country? Yes, I do. I think that should be one of the first steps, or one of the main things that we focus on in our society in order to make our society better and make that society a bit more rational. And then the secondary question becomes, how do you do that? And if the systems and the things that we've been doing up to this point haven't worked for that, maybe we need to do something else. Now, Yang's UBI is a good idea. Maybe not necessarily the way that Yang wants to implement it, but I do think getting the public in a mindset where, at the very least, their basic needs are met, kind of like a Social Security, it will be of benefit. Allowing people to have access or more control over their workspace and more ownership within the context of their workspace. Like, there are policies that you could take that will be in the interest of workers that the ruling elite, the 1%, will be entirely against. Entirely against. At some point, you got to choose your side, though, right? I'll end this here because we're way off topic. But like, share, and subscribe. Thanks, everyone.